The sun was setting over the small town, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. On a quiet street, a little girl no older than 7 sat on the steps of an old wooden porch, clutching a worn-out teddy bear. Her clothes were simple, her shoes slightly too big, but her eyes carried a kind of wisdom beyond her years. When she saw the tall man walking by, dressed in a plain shirt and jeans, she didn't see the wealth he was hiding behind that simple appearance. She only saw a lonely man, with a soft but steady voice. She looked up at him and said words that would stay with him forever. "You need a home, and I need a father." Her words were innocent, but they cut deeper than she could have imagined. The man froze for a moment, caught off guard by her honesty. People usually looked at him for his money, his status, his power. No one ever spoke to him like that, especially not a child who had no idea who he really was. This man, despite being one of the richest billionaires in the world, often walked the streets unnoticed, blending in with the crowd. He was searching for something money couldn't buy: peace, belonging, and maybe even love. But no one saw him as a man. They only saw his fortune. And yet, here was this little girl, speaking to him without fear, without greed, and without any clue of his identity. She wasn't asking for toys, clothes, or anything money could buy. She was asking for something far greater: a family, a bond, a place where her heart could finally rest. The man felt a lump in his throat, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. For once, someone wasn't demanding from him, but offering him something in return as the silence stretched between them. The little girl hugged her teddy bear tighter, her wide eyes waiting for an answer. He wanted to say something, but his voice caught. For the first time in his life, he didn't know if his billions could solve this moment. What he didn't know was that her words were about to change both of their lives, forever. And in that quiet evening, on a porch that had seen better days, their story truly began. The man slowly sat down on the edge of the porch, unsure why his legs felt so heavy. He glanced at the girl, still holding her teddy as if it were her shield against the world. There was something about her presence that disarmed him. She was fragile, yet her words carried strength. He hadn't planned on stopping that evening. In fact, he had been walking to clear his mind after another exhausting day filled with meetings and numbers. But this little stranger had stopped him with a single sentence. He studied her closely. Her hair was tied in small braids, and her dress looked like it had been worn too many times. She didn't complain, though. Her eyes, though young, carried a quiet resilience. He wondered what kind of life had shaped her to speak so boldly. Children usually ask for candy or toys, not a father. It stirred something in him, something he thought had long gone cold. The billionaire had spent most of his life building an empire, turning nothing into everything the world admired. Yet for all his wealth, he had no one waiting for him at home. No laughter in his hallways, no small voice calling out for him. The mansion he lived in was silent, echoing with emptiness. And here was this girl, unknowingly pointing out the truth he avoided for years. He had everything. And at the same time, he had nothing. But how could their worlds ever fit together? He was a man hiding behind simplicity, while she was a child hoping for the kind of love that money couldn't buy. As the evening breeze brushed past, he felt the weight of a choice forming inside him, though he couldn't yet see where it might lead. She shifted closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you believe in promises?" He looked at her, startled by the question, but before he could respond, the streetlight flickered on, casting long shadows across the porch. Something told him this moment wasn't accidental. It was the beginning of something neither of them could yet understand. The man cleared his throat, trying to find the right words. But the girl's question hung heavy in the air. Promises, that was something he had avoided his entire life. In the world of business, promises were easily broken, traded, or replaced. But this was different. This was a child, looking at him with eyes that believed in every word spoken. He felt a strange fear of letting her down, fear of admitting that he had no idea how to answer. He shifted his gaze to the street. The small neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place where everyone seemed to be struggling, yet life carried on. A couple of old cars were parked by the sidewalk, paint peeling and tires worn. He wondered if this was her world, and if so, what kind of battle she had already faced at such a young age. He wanted to ask, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the way she held herself, as if she had already told her story too many times and was tired of repeating it. For a moment, his mind drifted back to his own childhood. He remembered a time when he was the boy with nothing, standing on streets much like this one, dreaming of a future no one thought possible. He had worked his way out of that life, but the scars of it had never really faded. And now, staring at her, it was as if the past had come back in a new form, except this time he wasn't the child. The girl tilted her head, still waiting for his reply. And he realized she wasn't just asking if he believed in promises. She was asking if he could become one. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words refused to come. The night had grown colder, and in the distance a door slammed shut, echoing down the street like a warning neither of them could ignore. The slam of that door made the girl flinch. And for the first time, the man noticed the shadows in her eyes. She wasn't just a child making a bold request. There was something deeper behind her words. She hugged her teddy tighter, almost as if she was bracing herself for something she'd learned to expect. He felt an unfamiliar anger stirring inside him, not at her, but at the world that had forced her to carry such fear. The street had grown darker, and with each passing second, silence pressed heavier between them. The billionaire's heart pounded in his chest. He had faced cutthroat deals, ruthless boardrooms, and decisions worth billions, but nothing had ever shaken him like this moment. A child asking for a father, and his own soul whispering that maybe he needed her just as much. He finally asked her where her family was, his voice careful, but she looked away, avoiding his eyes. "People come and go," she said softly, almost rehearsed, as if she had said it many times before. That answer felt like a knife. People come and go. She had been left behind, over and over again, and still found the courage to sit there and ask a stranger for something more. He wanted to reach out, to say he would stay, but his throat tightened. Could he? Could he give her what she deserved? The weight of his fortune felt like chains in that moment. Money could buy houses, cars, even companies, but not the trust of a child who had already lost too much. Then, a figure appeared at the far end of the street, walking slowly toward them. The girl stiffened, her grip on the teddy bear turning white-knuckled. The man noticed the fear in her posture, the way her small shoulders tensed. Whoever was coming wasn't a stranger to her hand. That realization sent a chill through him. The footsteps grew louder, echoing against the quiet night, each one pulling the tension tighter. The billionaire's chest tightened, his instincts screaming that this was the moment everything would change. And just as the figure stepped into the light, the girl whispered, "Please, don't leave me." The billionaire's pulse quickened as the figure moved closer, stepping into the dim glow of the streetlight. It was a man older, rough around the edges, with a face marked by years of hard living. His eyes scanned the porch and landed on the little girl. She shrank back instantly, clutching her teddy so tight it looked as if she might tear it apart. The stranger's voice was low, sharp, and filled with something that made the air heavier. "There you are," he muttered, as if she had been hiding from him. The billionaire felt his body tense. He didn't know this man, but the child's reaction told him everything. This wasn't someone she trusted. This was someone she feared. His mind raced. Was this her guardian, or just another person who drifted in and out of her fragile world? The girl's earlier words echoed in his head. People come and go. The rough man's eyes shifted to him now, narrowing. "And who are you supposed to be?" There was suspicion in his tone, but also something else: recognition. It sent a ripple of unease down the billionaire's spine. For a moment, he wondered if his identity, so carefully hidden in this quiet walk, had been exposed. If this stranger knew who he really was, the whole fragile moment with the child could shatter in an instant. The girl tugged at his sleeve, whispering so faintly he almost missed it. "Don't let him take me." Her words pierced through the billionaire's defenses. This wasn't just a casual encounter which was a battle for trust, for safety, maybe even for her future. The stranger took a step forward, and the porch seemed smaller, tighter, like the walls were closing in. The night air was charged with an invisible weight. The billionaire knew he had only seconds to decide what role he would play in this girl's life: bystander or protector. And then, almost as if fate wanted to complicate everything further, his phone buzzed in his pocket. One glance at the screen made his stomach drop. It was a message revealing that his carefully guarded secret, his billionaire identity, had just been leaked to the world. The phone buzz seemed to echo louder than the stranger's footsteps. The billionaire's heart raced as he slipped the device back into his pocket, the weight of the world pressing on him. His identity was no longer a secret. The mask of simplicity he had worn so carefully was gone, and he could already feel the shift in the air. The older man's eyes flickered with recognition, and his tone changed instantly. "So it's true," he muttered, a greedy edge curling around his words. "You're him." The little girl clung to the billionaire's arm, trembling. She didn't understand the headlines or the billions, but she understood danger. The rough man wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking at the billionaire's fortune, and that was enough to tell her everything. In that moment, the billionaire stood, his presence suddenly larger, more commanding than before. He wasn't just a lonely man wandering the streets. He was someone with power, with choices, with the ability to change everything. His voice was firm but calm. "She stays with me." The stranger sneered, but there was hesitation in his step. The billionaire's calm confidence cut deeper than any threat. For the first time, the little girl saw him not as a passerby, but as someone who could protect her. The silence that followed felt endless until the older man finally turned away. Muttering under his breath as he disappeared into the shadows, the girl buried her face against him, whispering, "I knew you wouldn't leave me." Those simple words made his chest ache, because in that instant he realized she had given him something. Money had never been able to buy purpose. But just as the night seemed to settle, his phone buzzed again. This time the message wasn't about his wealth being exposed, was about someone from his past, a name he hadn't heard in years. And it was connected to the little girl. The billionaire froze, his grip tightening protectively. The twist he never expected was staring him in the face. This child wasn't just a stranger who crossed his path. She was tied to his story in ways neither of them had yet uncovered. The name flashing on his phone pulled him back into memories he thought were long buried. It belonged to someone who had once been close to him, someone who had walked away when he was still struggling to survive. As he pieced it together, the realization struck hard. The little girl wasn't a stranger at all. She was family. Through choices and mistakes that had left scars on both sides, their lives had been separated. But fate had drawn them together again on that porch. His chest tightened as he looked down at her, her small fingers still clutching his sleeve. The truth weighed heavily, but it also gave him clarity. She wasn't just asking for a father. She was unknowingly asking for what had been hers all along. That night, under the glow of the streetlight, he made a quiet promise to himself. This time, he wouldn't run. He wouldn't hide behind work or wealth. He would stay. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Questions had to be answered, trust had to be built, and the shadows of the past had to be faced. But slowly, the silence of his mansion was replaced by the sound of laughter, by the warmth of a child filling the empty spaces. For her, the world no longer felt so uncertain. For him, the billions no longer felt so heavy. In the end, the greatest fortune he had ever found wasn't locked in banks or business deals. It was sitting across the table from him, smiling with her teddy bear beside her plate, calling him Dad. Sometimes the most powerful stories don't begin with riches or power, but with a simple plea from a child. And sometimes the greatest wealth is found in the family you never expected to have.